and welcome to another GALECA Talks conversation, where today we get to feast on an immersive art piece that is a purely beautiful and prolific bit of storytelling. Of course, we're talking about Nickel Boys. My name is Wadooah Wali, an advisory board member of GALECA, the Society of LGBTQ Entertainment Critics Association. And for those of you who don't know, GALECA consists of more than 540 plus career journalists from around the world who cover television, film, and or Broadway/off-Broadway for a variety of media outlets. The reason we exist today is to remind the world that, including bullies, bigots, and our own embattled communities, that the LGBTQ plus I has often led the way in spotting unique, powerful, and exciting work being done in film, TV, and theater. We're also here to champion the intelligent, informed, and enlightened entertainment criticism, mindful of the often underestimated effect that stories and imagery have on society. This film most definitely checks all of these boxes. But before we bring on our guests, also joining me from GALECA to co-moderate today's Nickel Boys conversation is...
Well, hello everyone. My name is Rendy Jones. I am a journalist, a film critic. You can see my work on Roger Ebert, Autostraddle, um, Den of Geek, and my own site, Rendy Reviews. We are joined today by the wonderful cast and crew of Nickel Boys. About Nickel Boys, it is based on the Pulitzer Prize-winning novel by Colson Whitehead and inspired by real-life events. Nickel Boys chronicles the powerful friendship between two black teenagers who become wards of a juvenile reformatory in Florida. In breakout performances that cut to the bone, Ethan Herisse and Brandon Wilson play Elwood and Turner, whose close bonds help sustain their hope, even as truths unfold around them at Nickel Academy. Today, we have the distinct honor and pleasure of talking about Nickel Boys and being joined by visionary director and co-writer RaMell Ross, um, and the film's stars, the Queen, Ms. Aunjanue Ellis-Taylor, Ethan Heresy, and Brandon Wilson.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you very much, Rendy. Good to see you again.
Good to
Thank you
see
for
you
having
too.
us.
Yeah, let's get into it. And like I said, I just wanted to sneak in here and take the talking stick before I turned over to Rendy, just because I am an immersive storyteller. That is my medium. And so when I sat down to watch for the first time, all of a sudden my mind was going in and out of wanting to see it in a device, in the headset, or even at a place like Cosm, which is, this immersive. At some point, you definitely check it out. You should look at it. But so I already know the power of that kind of filmmaking. It elicits a deeper emotion and connections. And so what was it? I mean, like, I know people talk about the technique and which, mirrors a lot of the types of storytelling that we do in this immersive media. But like, what was it for you that decided that you decided to go that route for this particular film?
Well, it seemed like the most logical way to explore it. It's really fun to chat with people and for them to use words like bold or what a risk. But it's just the way that I use the camera and it's the way that I think about authorship over images. And I would love for every image ever made to for you to know that it came from a person with an ideology and with a cultural context and with a time period and history producing the way that they think about the world. It would really be helpful. But images don't work that way. And so I was lucky to have Hale County this evening as a sort of proof of concept. If you all aren't familiar with it, it's a film that I made previously that was essentially first person, but without my hands. To kind of have a baseline language and sensibility to bring into the Nickel story. But I will say, with your ideas about immersion and your work in the space of kind of being a participant player in these worlds, there's something about doing it in a cinema without a headset, but also through the image, really truly controlling the attention so that everyone's kind of having a communal subjective experience. And some could say that that is all cinema, but the degree to which the wide angle lenses and the infinite focus offer an opportunity to kind of wander the frame, I think it's slightly different when we're all sharing the same character's headspace.
Absolutely. That's why I said, yeah, Cosm, check out, go to one of those locations because that was more of it, that shared group experience. I mean, like experience of it all and why it left us, we all left carrying that film for days after. So anyway, thank you, Rendy, for letting me asking it to you.
Of course. And I shall take it from here. Starting with RaMell, tell me how you came to this project after directing your doc, Hail Country this evening. What and the decision of taking the basis of Nickel Boys and take and bringing it to another level through the first person perspective.
Reading the book and going back to the source material, going to Colson's glossary and seeing that there was a nonfiction book about this, and then there was a 150-page document about the Dozier School boys. It really honestly just rhymed with my art practice. Talking with people, there's a lot of like, oh my God, this came out of nowhere, or like, where did like these images? And I'm like, y'all, I've been making critical images in the South for 15 years. Like I spent my first 3 years making photos in the South that I don't show anyone because it was getting me to the point where I could shed that universal aesthetic. I could shed the infiltration of some of the photographers that Aunjanue talked about, like Walker Evans and William Christianberry, who have sort of written override our ability to make images that are personally ours. And with that, kind of bringing that what I think to be a pretty specific sensibility to myself into the characters, into Elwood and Turner, and allowing them to author their worlds from that time period with that distinct photographic sensibility seems to be a way to sort of fill out that interstitial space of Colson's narrative and allow for the viewer to participate in a poetry of life during a time in which there was a sort of constant terror looming and maybe even silent at times.
Well, tell me about the finding that intricate balance in depicting the brutalities that happen within Nickel without ever, illustrating the violence itself. Like I think it's such a phenomenal aspect of the film that like rings so true of, you can just see the images, but y you're not really seeing it.
Yeah, I love that you said that at the end. Like you see it, but you don't see it. And the reason why that's the case is because they're already in our head. Like we know them so well. And I think at some point in time, we have to ask ourselves as artists and makers, who are these images for? Right? Like we knew who they were for in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s and 90s. They were for everyone to see and to witness and to get an understanding as to the horrors, right? But when those images are the ones that populate the zeitgeist primarily for a specific population of people, people of color, they have maybe an adverse effect where it's like, oh, those things happen to them. You're like so used to seeing them that they almost justify themselves. And it allows us to not forefront the idea that that is horribly wrong and that shouldn't be happening at all. And so our approach, Jocelyn Barnes and my approach was to not take the moment of violence visually as the thing to be truly kind of glorified or elevated to the altar of cinema, but to let the action be in the minds of the viewers and let the psychological, psychic consequences of that action be populate the film in a variety of different ways, sonically and through imagery and through inference.
I wanted to open up the discussion to the rest of the cast we have here. Ingenue, please tell me how you got attached to the project because I read that you saw RaMell's previous doc and was like, I gotta get in touch with him some one way or another.
Yeah, I was stunned by RaMell's work in Hale County. Um and I felt, I felt that I felt something that was akin to an intimate witness, you know. Um I felt that um I was I was being cared for. My life was being cared for and cared about through this lens that this man held. And so, I knew whatever he was doing, if he ever did something narrative, I knew, implicitly that I could trust him. Because that there's a morality in making images in that way. And that's what I saw in Hell County. Um, so, it really didn't matter what he wanted to do. I just wanted to be a part of it. My wanting to reach out to him was not just any sort of like, well, I want a job. So if you do something, holla at me. It was really, I just wanted to tell him how I felt. And then Nickel Boys came around, and um I was just, like I've said, I felt heard by the universe.
Rendy,
Uh,
we were lucky to have her. She makes it seem like, she was stepping into this project, being the one that's appreciative. Like the film is a little bit hollow without the soul of Aunjanue kind of coming through the lens and into the audience, and to use Ethan's words as the scene partner.
Um, what about for you, Ethan and Brandon? I read that Ethan, you were literally in class when you got the role of Elroy.
Yeah, I was in an inorganic chemistry lecture at like 9 a.m. or something.
Oh my
Um,
God. That's
yeah,
crazy.
my manager like texted me. She was like, "Pick up the phone right now. It's an emergency." And I was like, "Whoa, okay then." Like, yeah. And I stepped out of class. She got my other reps and my family on the phone, and then told me the news. It was pretty, yeah, a really lovely moment for many reasons, But when I look back on it, yeah. Thanks, RaMell. I'm telling you that class was really kicking my ass at the time. So I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to go and play with something else for a little while.
Ethan, truth be told, we really just wanted a scientist on set. We were like, we
Yeah.
need like some hard science with all this art
I'm
and
glad you
ephemeral
chose me,
thinking.
man. I'm glad you chose me. But yeah, really special moment. And I mean, I was already filled with so much joy to be a part of something that I really wanted to be a part of. But looking back on it now and being really fulfilled in so many ways from that experience, and being able to call RaMell and Brandon and Aunjanue like really good friends, is it's I it's been a really incredible journey.
And what about you, Brandon?
Um, I was in the casting process a little bit longer than Ethan. Um, so th there's different things that did. I think by the time when I did a chemistry read prior to doing a chemistry read with Ethan, and we were there in New Orleans for like we were in the room for like 4 hours doing these long scenes that you see in the film. So I remember there's definitely a part of me that was like, I already did it. I'm over it. I did it already. Um, I'm very glad and grateful that I got to actually go and do it and realize that, oh, I hadn't done it yet. Now I get to actually be in the world and be with these people and make this thing. Um, so yeah, but I had that feeling. Also, I got a call from my manager as well. He put the other people on the line. He was like, I mean, you usually know what this means when we have everyone here. And also, I had been in this casting process for a while. He was like, so do you want to say it or should we? I was like, we don't have to say it. We know. And then we went and made a movie.
Well, tell me about finding the chemistry between you and Ethan, because you are like both of you guys are the catalyst of this story, and like the brotherhood that you guys share while being at Nickel, it just grips us even further, especially with the opposing ideologies based on the experiences you two had. How was it to like find each other and find the individuality of your characters?
Hmm. It feels like a lot of that happens. I mean, we have this script already so like beautifully written, and that gives us so much. Um, and then we show up as individual people. So that also that's done. And then we get to yeah, I mean the chemistry I think we clicked very quickly. And from there we just get to continue to explore and then we get to meet RaMell and get thrust into these worlds and these two characters get to take shape and take form and much more somebody else can speak on if they'd like.
It everything that, yeah, I mean, Brandon covered a lot of it, but I guess focusing on the individual part of it, um, is that we learned a lot about each other as ourselves and connected with each other as ourselves. And doing that really allowed us to be able to dive into these characters with more authenticity, I feel, and um, it allowed us to kind of communicate in a different way and brought an excitement to exploring the space together and exploring these characters together. So, um, yeah, I'll think another big part of it is that like we're friends. Like we liked hanging out with each other, like when we weren't Turner and Elwood, and yeah, that did wonders for when we would spend time together as Turner and Elwood.
Yeah,
And for
Rendy. Oh,
oh, sorry, kid, go ahead.
yeah, if you don't mind me just adding a bit to what the two are saying, which I think is actually pretty insightful. You know, I remember wondering how Tree of Life happened, the film, Terrence Malick film, and talking to Dee Dee, and she said that the three boys spent months like living together and hanging out beforehand, right? And so their chemistry on set implies moments that are as intimate as the ones that you're seeing that happen outside of it. And so it's the time that these two spent at Waffle House and just hanging out that aside from them having a natural chemistry that like oozes into the scenes, and you kind of therefore feel that, you know, what you're seeing is just one moment from longer moments that they have. You think about like Leonardo DiCaprio's process in Django, which was to never hang out or meet any of like, you know, the other characters, so that when he sees them, that animosity and that friendship is not that the animosity is there and the friendship isn't there. It's kind of it's quite beautiful to like build outside to present in front of the lens.
Yes. It's tricky too when you and when I hear like other people speak about it because I'm living in it. So I'm not necessarily like analyzing what's happening between like me and Ethan's friendship or so like when I'm asked about it, I guess I do tend to speak about it, I mean ignorantly and also maybe a bit flippantly, but I get to hear other people elucidate the experience a bit more and how that might have affected what we did. So it's nice.
And before we open it up to the rest of our members, Aunjanue, I wanted to ask, tell me how you channeled Hattie, uh, because she is such a kind of a universal portrayal of all these supportive like grandmothers of Black children. Like I saw so much of my grandmother within her. But also I just adore the way how you tap into that soulfulness, illustrating like the such a repressed trauma and pain while trying to keep a positive exterior, especially within the kitchen scene. With your delivery, your portion is pain, but having to make that uh positive face towards Elwood, it lives in my head rent free.
Um, yeah, I think, I think she is a I had a grandmother who was, you know, pretty incredible, and um in the way that she expressed love for me, but she didn't express love for me in the way that Hattie expressed love for Elwood. She expressed love for me in very practical ways. Um, and I won't go into those right now, but She never smiled particularly. She never brushed my hair and it was like, oh, aren't you adorable? Like she didn't do those things. But her love for me was boundless. Uh, and hard fought. Because, I was a child growing up in the South. So, she didn't have a lot of money. So, yeah. So what I wanted to do was to outwardly express all the things that my grandmother withheld from me because she couldn't have time. She didn't have time. And she honestly was very shy. So I wanted to be the outward expression of my grandmother's love.
Well, that's such a beautiful answer. Now we like to open it up to the chat to questions from our members. We don't have a lot of time, unfortunately, so please keep that in mind.
A lot of people, there's been a lot of discussion about, how you felt about the filming process and how foreign it was to go from this first person perspective. But yeah, I'm curious what your experience was of watching it for the first time. Again, like kind of going back to what we were talking about, that group watch effect, and or even just taking it outside of that. What was that like for you to see it? Because I have to imagine that's got to be a different feeling and process from doing the work to actually seeing the vision play out. And then part two of that would be especially given that there's so many screenings happening, what would you want people to take away from it? So what was your experience of it, and what is your hope for people's experience to be of this film?
I've only seen the first few minutes of the film, the first maybe like a minute and a half of the film. And I've seen like the last maybe minute of the film, but I haven't seen the bulk of it. But the first, you know, the first minute that I did see, what I felt was immediately pulled in, immediate gravity, um, just with seeing Elwood's hand in the ground, on the ground, in the grass, and hearing the sounds of um, the mosquitoes and the butterflies hovering above him, and the life of nature. And I know that, I know that image really, really well. That's us hanging out in the grass in the summer in the South, And there's an extreme beauty in that, but there's also the ever present danger in that. And I felt that immediately. So I was like, this is a movie I want to see one day. Um, and then the other thing that I felt in terms of like what I want people to take away, I mean, I feel like what the reason why this film works, is that you are immersed in the what it allows for is that, the pain of these children to be communicated in a way that we all share it. And what I hope that people will do, not walk away with, but will be voices for these children. Because what this happened to them when they were children. So I want people to be the voices for these children, these families, and, make a decision that, something like this won't be allowed again to happen. It happened because of a conspiracy of silence. So we have the opportunity to break that silence. Somebody else talk.
I know. I was like, anybody else want to follow that?
Sorry, I believe Yar has a question. Yar Way.
You killed it, Aunjanue. I don't.
Speechless. We're speechless.
No, but Ethan, I've been trying to get you to say this all day. Was you talk your how you talk about you and Brandon, like one of the things that you said, you talk about how the we you're our scene, you are the audience is a scene partner now,
Mm.
And Brandon, you talked about how the film disrupts this idea of seeing, disrupts gaze both of you have talked about that in separate occasions. So I would like to hear them talk about that.
Me too, Aunjanue.
Well, I would love to talk about it. Do you want to would you like to ask this question first? I don't want to.
This is Yahweh, San Francisco Sindao Chinese Radio.
Hmm.
RaMell, congratulations for this marvelous movie. And
Thank
I
you,
saw
thank
it
you.
twice during the editing or the scripting. And how did you decide that when you're going to use the first person view of Elwood and when it's going to be Turner? How do you switch? What is that decision making?
Hmm. Yeah, really great question, and kind of a bit technical and a bit there's like a little bit of technical in there, there's a little bit of writing in there, and there's a little bit of like intuition. The
You muted yourself.
I'm just like talking and I just mute myself simultaneously. It's just like who's I can't multitask. Um the the writing process is pretty rigorous. Like all of the images that are in the film, were preconceived and they were in the script. The moments in which we jump perspectives are all in the script. They're all sort of planned out based on who we want to be looking at what and who we want to be looking at who. And I think over the course of the edit, we end up sometimes actually in filming not having time to film an entire scene from another person's point of view. Most of the time it's written that we won't, but a couple times we get the sense that we may want to be able to have coverage by means of the other person's gaze. And so, aside from those two things, in the edit, it's just truly about feel. And of course, going by the script as the first blueprint, we put that down and we see whether or not it's functioning in the way in which we expected it to. And if it doesn't, then we check to see if we have the other person's point of view to kind of go back and forth. But for the most part, the ones that you're seeing going back and forth, that was built in the script. Ethan, speaking of
Yes.
the script, what's not written into the script is the scene partner.
Yeah, I will
It's
I will
written
I,
in,
I will
yeah.
I will talk about that. Yeah, it's a thought that I had, I don't know, a few Q&As ago, but there are so many when you are working on a film and it's shot traditionally, as an actor, you have your scene partner. You're working with another person. You can touch them. You can look into their eyes. You can, it is a much more kind of like, I guess, physical and more involved process with your scene partner when you're shooting something traditionally. And with this, we didn't really get that opportunity to look into our scene partner's eyes um, while we're performing the scene or touch them really. Aunjanue found ways to incorporate it, but at least not in the way that you would want to naturally in the scene. And so when we finished filming, there was this special feeling of, yeah, this felt really great. It felt like we were a part of something special, and we put a lot of love into it. But because it's shot all POV, we don't really know what that's going to look like and how it's going to work. It was, belief in RaMell and trust in his vision that, it was all gonna be okay. But you don't really have an idea of what things are going to look like because you didn't have that experience where you were looking into the eyes of your scene partner. And so I realized, like, as actors, we are now kind of getting the feedback and the reaction from these moments that we had on set during these scenes from the audience because everything is being played to them. You know, um, Grandma Hattie is saying to an audience member, "I let you down," and that cuts really deep. Aunjanue doesn't know that I was behind the camera, like I felt that in my stomach and I was affected by it, but she couldn't see that. But what we do get to see is how audience members are internalizing it and what it means to them. And it's already unique in so many ways, the experience of watching this movie. But it also, another way in which it is unique is that the audience kind of becomes our scene partners, and we get to see the impact of the decisions that we made on set, 2 years ago while performing. We get to see the impact of that and be informed on that and know that, okay, we were being honest, and everything that we did was filled with life, because it's affected people in a really incredible way. So yeah, it's a really fascinating opportunity to connect with the audience. And yeah, we might not have been able to hug the way that we wanted to or look at each other the way that we wanted to, but we know that we now know the kind of fruits of our labor when we talk to audience members, because they in a way become our scene partners.
I'll ask this final question. Um, uh, so RaMell, you and your DP Jomo Frey have like this excellent rapport. I've seen it in person, the on my last viewing, and I was just so curious about like the conversations you guys had in discussing the film style and the intricacies of having every shot feel so true to life.
Yeah, Jomo's yeah, he's a wonderful yeah, guy in general, but also a whiz when it comes to things around the emotionality of the image. A lot of the conversations um were about how, like, the sort of pacing of the camera. How faithful should we be to human head movement? Do we whip, like when someone's looking at the other person and they're agreeing, do they nod? Does the camera nod then? Um, it's quite fickle, the relationship between being taken out of a moment and being immersed in a moment. And so it was really about kind of distilling the language of the the camera as the character into its most rudimentary form, and not allowing and asking the audience to take a leap with us, and not trying to be faithful to what it means to look as a human and what it means to be a responsive human in a moment of interaction with the camera. Yeah, it was incredible. It was a lot of fun, and I think you all see the fruits of the labor.
Thanks so much, Rendy, and thank you to our panelists from Nickel Boys. We wish them continued success as they're killing it on awards currently, and we wish them continued success. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in today. And if you like this content and this conversation, please like it, like us, follow us, and there's more to come, more good times here on YouTube.